All right. Those look okay?
You could go full screen and then otherwise we're good.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So welcome everyone. So some of you I already know because I know some of you are co-terminal and other ones I don't. So welcome. My name is Rich Radke and I'm the Master's Program Director for ECSC. And so I'm the one who basically will be signing off on all your forms and unless you have a research advisor kind of being a point of contact for things like academic advising. So obviously we're still online for a couple weeks, but you can find me up on the seventh floor. I guess my office isn't on here, but I'm up in the seventh floor on the corner office 7002. So, between Kelly and I, we will be kind of taking care of your master's thesis progress as things go through the process. And of course, Dr. Abuzaid is kind of like the overall graduate program director. And so he may also get involved depending on what kinds of issues you have. So basically, almost everything that you need to do can be accomplished by emailing Kelly various forms. There aren't that many forms that you need to be worried about. We'll talk about them in just a second. But other than that, most of you will just be taking 2 or 3 semesters of classes and maybe doing some research and getting a master's degree out of it. So like I said, the main point of contact is Kelly and her office, and you should already know her by now. And so that's usually the first point of contact for a question, either making an appointment or knocking in or a drop in or sending an email. And then we have a web page that has all of the other stuff on it, which I think I have in one of these slides. Um, I don't think I need to tell you that this is a good time to be an electrical engineer. I think that electrical engineering, I think many of you are probably already electrical engineering or computer engineering majors as undergrads, so I don't have to sell you on the major. But I think that EE is a good field to be in because it's not just about circuits and power. It's about how does information travel through systems, and this impinges on all sorts of real world issues ranging from healthcare to self-driving cars to cybersecurity and so on. So basically, if you are a good electrical engineer, that knowledge of how information runs through a system is really important. And so electrical engineering actually basically plays a major role in almost all of these grand challenges for engineering that the National Academy of Engineers has identified, right? In terms of, do you need electrical engineers on your team to make these goals happen? Yes, you do, right? So hopefully getting a little bit more advanced study in the coursework that you're going to undertake will help you prepare for a better career. So in ECSC, much like many other departments, we kind of split up our research areas in 6 things. You can certainly find the details of these research areas on our webpage and who's doing what. Um, the faculty have provided little research summaries, like 1-slide summaries of what they do. And of course, almost all faculty have more detailed kind of drill down web pages that have their papers and their research interests and all that stuff. So, the main place to start is the landing page for our graduate programs. And I guess that, I could go to it. You can see what it looks like on your own. Basically, this is where you'll find all the forms, all the policies, the graduate student handbook. Basically, everything you need is online. So I just want to talk a little bit today about the logistics of what you need to do to successfully complete the degree. So you can get the degree either in electrical engineering or computer and systems engineering. It's totally up to you. We'll talk about kind of what that means in a later slide. Personally, I don't think that it will make a huge difference in your, in your future job, whether you call yourself an electrical engineer or a computer and systems engineer. The main thing that I focus on is the 30 credit hours beyond the bachelor's degree. That's the main thing that you'll need to accomplish. And typically it's done in 2 or 3 or at most 4 semesters from the time that you got your bachelor's degree. So of those 30 credits, 24 of them at least need to be actual courses, right? Which are either 4,000 or 6,000 level courses. The other ones could be a project, could be thesis credits if you're doing a thesis. But fundamentally, you get a master's degree by taking just more courses, and these courses are going to be harder courses than you're probably used to if you're coming right out of undergrad. Our major or our program is very flexible. There are very few actual requirements other than the few that I'll mention in just a minute for your plan of study. But basically, you can kind of build your own, experience in the master's program very easily. Um, you can go both ways. So some of you may be PhD students that want to get a master's along the way, and that's certainly fine. And some of you may be master's students that are curious about what research is like and may be interested to apply to the PhD program afterwards, and that's also fine, right? So a master's degree is a good place to kind of whet your appetite for doing what may be a much longer research career as a PhD. So let's talk about registration because this is currently the ad period and you want to make sure that you get this part right. So some of you may be straight out master's degree candidates who are coming to our program from an already existing bachelor's degree from outside. And some of you I know are coterm students who are already RPI students that have done your undergraduate here. The requirements are more or less the same, but let me just say that so if you are not a coterm, basically you have to take at least 9 credits if you're a TA and at least 12 credits if you're an RA or if you're a self-paying student, and you can take at most 16 credits. So it's important to stay within these boundaries. And it's extremely important, as we'll talk about in a minute, not to drop below these minimums. That can cause big problems for you, could potentially cause problems with your visa, certainly would cause problems for us in the department. So it's important that when you're planning your courses for this semester, to leave yourself a little bit of slack. So if you have to drop a course, will you still be above these minimums, right? That's really important. Coterm, 12 credits is your minimum, right? And so I know that many of you are high achievers, have been taking lots of courses already, and you maybe are used to some heavy semesters, like maybe you've taken like an 18 credit semester or a 21 credit semester. That's something that I wouldn't recommend doing as a coterm because the 6,000 level courses are going to be much harder than the 4,000 level courses in the sense that they may be less work on paper. Like it may be like, oh, there's just like 4 homeworks in this course and 2 exams compared to the, homework I had every day in signals, right? But you'll find that these homeworks are often harder. The exams often have much more writing on them. So you don't want to take, I would say much more than 15 credits per semester as a coterm. Because you're going to be taking these, if you're taking 4 or 5 graduate level courses, that is a heavy load. And I wouldn't recommend piling anything more on top of that. So the you probably when you applied to the coterm program, you probably already heard the details about how the split between the undergraduate part of your career and the master's part works. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So these credit things are really important, certainly for getting paid, right? So if you're a TA or an RA, all that stuff has to be above board for your financial aid to work out. And Kelly may have already covered some of this stuff in the previous session. Basically, by now, everyone should be registered. I don't think that you could be, attending classes right now if you weren't registered, right? And also, I think that anyone who is a TA already knows what course they're TAing for. They've talked to Dr. Liu. Dr. Liu is the main point person for TA issues. And certainly, if you're, a current TA and you are having any sort of issues there, first talk to your faculty member who is the person for the course, who's teaching the course. If you feel like there's some reason why you can't talk to that person, then the next person to talk to is maybe Dr. Liu, who will see about whether or not there's anything he can do. And then that may bubble up to Kelly or me or Dr. Abuze, depending on what the situation is. But then generally, Dr. Liu is the one who is the TA, you know, um, coordinator. Okay, so let's talk about the plan of study, right? The plan of study is probably something that's already been hammered into your head a little bit uh, earlier in the day. It's important that you have this plan of study on file at every point that you are in your career, right? And the first one that you file, if you haven't done so already, should be by the end of next week. Now, this is not um, it is not a like set in stone document. You'll probably revise this plan several times during your master's degree. So the most important thing is starting, this week to think about, okay, so what courses am I taking now? What would I take in the fall? And then what would I take in the next spring? And put those together in the template and make sure it satisfies all of our rules, right? Um, that will then you'll send that to Kelly. She'll look it over to make sure it looks okay, go back and forth with you if there are any issues. She'll send it to me. I'll take a look at it, then I'll sign it, and then we send it to OGE. This plan is going to change a lot because, you know, a course that you were planning to take in the fall may not be offered, and so you have to replace it with some other course. Maybe you don't even know what's going to be offered in spring of 2023, and you just have to guess based on what's being offered now what might work, right? So it's totally fine to revise this plan as often as you need to. So don't worry about whether or not, oh, I don't know what I'm going to take in 2023. That's fine. No one knows what's going to happen then. But you can make your best guess. And as long as what you put down satisfies the requirements, then that's all you need, right? And that will hopefully keep you on track to say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure I satisfy all the boxes I need to check? The plan study should be 30 credits, even though you may have accumulated more than that in your 3 semesters that you take to do the master's, there should only be 30 credits that appear on the plan of study. So make sure that when you edit your plan, it will be much easier with the Office of Graduation if it adds up to exactly 30. That may mean that you have to knock off 1 credit of a math course that, or knock off 1 credit of a 4 credit course that now looks like a 3 credit course. Or if you have other courses that you take that don't even count towards the plan, that's fine, right? But we don't want to look at plans of study that have like 38 credits, right? We just want a solid 30 credit plan of study for each of you. Um, but as soon as you make a change, like as soon as you register for the courses next semester, for example, you should update your plan to reflect what you're actually doing, right? So the plan of study should basically be your best effort to be accurate as to what you've done and what you're going to do every semester. Other stuff that you're gonna have to fill out at some point, there's probably a bunch of stuff you filled out already or in the process of filling out, like this intellectual property agreement, for example, TA information forms if you want to be a TA. Down the road, if you choose to do a master's thesis, for example, there are some more forms where you have to say who's your advisor, who is on your committee. If you are a research assistant, like getting RA funding from somewhere, you probably have to do this research training, this city training that you will be informed about, this responsible conduct of research. So there's lots of forums and so on. We will send you reminders of stuff that you haven't done, so don't worry too much about that. But please be proactive and start filing these forms before we know that they are due, right? And so again, if you look at the academic calendar every year, they have the dates that are required for the submission of all these forms. For you, I think that we probably have got a bunch of onboarding forms that you've probably already filled out. And the next thing you probably have to worry about is, if you're a TA or an RA and you want to do some research, or if you're a research person, you want to do some research, some of this stuff will start to come into play. If you're a TA, you probably already heard this from Dr. Abuzaid, but being a TA is a job, right? And it's a job that you're getting paid for. Uh, Maybe not a lot, but you're getting paid to do it, and so you should treat it like a job that you're taking seriously, right? Which means, showing up on time, doing the work, not leaving before the end of the semester is due because you want to get an early flight home. You have to be around until the grading is done, basically. Talk to your professor about what the expectations and requirements are for that class and take it seriously, right? Because being a TA is not um, what's the word? Like, being a TA as a master's student is actually not really that typical. And if you do have a TA, it's actually quite a gift because normally a master's degree is either self-pay or getting a research fellowship or something. So it's important that you stay in the good graces of your professor and your department by doing a good job of being a TA, because if you do a bad job, then you may not be allowed to do it again. Then you have to figure out how am I going to pay for my degree, right? So this is the time to make sure you have the expectations understood with a professor if you're TAing for them about what do I need to do. Um, Similar for RAs, um, communication is really important, right? So make sure that your advisor is well in the loop about like if you're going to take some time off for some reason, if you're sick, if you're traveling, these are things that you don't plan and then let your advisor know later. You have to let them know kind of beforehand, say, will this work out with what we need to do, right? So please make sure that you do that. again, all this stuff I think will be covered if we have our regular TA best practices workshop, which is held by uh, former TAs, and I think that would really be helpful if you're a TA. Okay. So if you're already an undergraduate, you're familiar with the old add and drop deadlines, basically. So add deadline is the end of next week. Uh, by that point, you want to have all the courses that you think you're going to take in your calendar. And drop deadline is usually 9 or 10 weeks into the semester. Check the RPI academic calendar for the exact date. Remember, super critical, don't drop a course if it brings you below the required load, right? That's a big issue. I mean, right now in the first 2 weeks, everything is changeable, right? So you can move stuff around right now, but make sure that when you are fully registered at the end of next week, that you are above the required minimums with a little bit of slack. One thing that you can do is to register for basically, what are called research credits with me to bring it up to say 15 credits. I don't know. Do you want to say something, Kelly, about that?
I was just going to mention about the drop deadline is March 4th.
Okay. So March 4th, is a long way away. By that time, you should know how well you're doing in a class. But, keep in mind that after that date, you're stuck with the class, right? So, the Office of Graduate Education doesn't really approve late adds or late drops. I mean, they don't like it for undergraduates and they really don't like it for graduate students. And just saying, oh, I think I'm going to be doing badly in the course is not an excuse, right, for a late drop or a late add. So just make sure that your ducks are in a row when it comes to planning your courses. We have these Mercer lectures, I believe. I don't know if we have one this week, but basically, please check your emails. Every few Wednesdays, we have an external speaker that is usually from academia or industry talking about some aspect of electrical engineering. These are good for professional development, and Dr. Hella, I believe, is organizing this series. Unless you have a course conflict with Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, you should be attending these Mercer lectures when they come around, because that's something that is good for understanding a broader perspective on the field. So a little bit more detail. So you can either do a master's degree with a thesis or without a thesis. And so most people who are coterms do without thesis. And most people in general who are doing a master's degree do it without the thesis. Not to say you can't do a thesis, you just have to plan ahead a little bit more, right? So let's talk about what you need to do for the requirements. So first of all, are you EE or CSE? Generally it kind of depends on your research area. For most of the stuff that I do, for example, I would be more of a CSE person because I'm a computer vision person. So networking, robotics, stuff like that is generally CSE, whereas stuff where you're actually getting your hands on circuits like, you know, photonics and stuff like that is EE. And then there are some things that are kind of in the middle that you could really go either way. So I wouldn't overthink this, just do whichever one you feel like makes more sense to you, whether you feel like you're more of a purple ellipse person or a red ellipse person in terms of what you do for the plan of study. If you're not doing a thesis, which is the most common thing, then you can do it in 2 semesters with a very heavy load because you'd have to be taking 15 credits a semester, which is a lot. Normally, we see people doing it in 3 semesters, which is fine. At most, 2.5 years, which is a long time to be in a master's program. Um, you can do a project if you want to do a project. Um, not typically done, but it's certainly possible. So if you have a professor that you like a lot and you want to do some sort of like a 1 or 2 semester project with them, you can fill in, say, 6 credits of your plan of study with master's project with a certain person. And just like a course, you'll have a grade for that project that will show up on your transcript. Um, it's not, again, something that you could force a professor into doing, right? So you can't just go up to Professor Schur and say, okay, I'm going to do a master's project with you this semester, what's it going to be? You have to have an agreement with the professor that you're mutually willing to work on this project together. And um, so this is the right time in some sense to talk around to faculty that are in your area of interest to see if anyone happens to have something that could make a good master's project. If any of you did undergraduate research at RPI, maybe you already know some professors, maybe you did a URP or something like that, where you have some sense of what different professors do. Um, Typically, though, if you're doing it without a thesis, you're just going to be taking courses. And there's going to be a slot on your plan of study that says, you know, advisor, and that in a basic sense is me, right? So you should put my name down if you don't have an advisor, and I will act as your kind of academic advisor for the duration of your master's degree. So when you submit that form to Kelly, she will forward it to me, and I'll sign both in the place that says academic advisor and in the slot that says MS program director. Now, if you are doing a thesis, then you have another advisor who is guiding you on your research, and then that person will be, in the slot that says advisor, and I will sign off only once in the master's program category, right? So for a thesis, you definitely need to plan ahead, and you have to know that it's going to be more work, right? So a thesis is basically a deep research experience where you do at least 2 semesters of research with the professor. You register for what are called master's thesis credits. You produce a document that will go in the library that is your master's thesis, and you also have to defend that document in front of an official committee, right? So basically, you have a team of your advisor and 2 other professors who will listen to you present this work orally and ask you questions and sign off that it was acceptable. You can also do a presentation in a way that, like, if you get a paper accepted at a conference and you go to present your work at a conference, that can count as a public presentation. But it is, any way you slice it, it's definitely more, it's deeper, it's more work. I totally encourage it. I mean, I did a master's thesis when I was kind of like a co-term type thing, but most people are just going to do the master's with coursework, and that's fine. Uh, Co-term requirements are basically the same type of deal as what I just talked about. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have to get everything done by the end of year 5, uh, unlike a new master's student who gets basically a little bit more time to complete it. So basically, you've done your master's, or I'm sorry, you've done your bachelor's degree in 4 years. You have one more academic year to polish off all of the requirements for the master's. And so hopefully many of you in the co-term program have already taken some courses that you know you're going to put forward to your master's degree plan of study, right? So I think that when you applied for the co-term, you had this 5-year planner, and we should have already seen some of these courses showing up at the end of year 4 that are not needed for your bachelor's degree that you're going to pay forward to your master's degree plan of study. And so you have to complete everything for the bachelor's in 4 years. And so if you're talking to me now, either you're in your first year of your, basically maybe you're in your 5th year. Is that true, Kelly? Is everyone here already doing the 5th year, or are some people here in their 4th year?
Some are in their 4th year. In fact, a large chunk of them are actually in the end of their 4th year because of the way the co-term requirements are as far as when the application is done.
Oh, right. We're in the spring. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got confused. Okay. So yeah, so most of you are in your final semester of your 4th year, and hopefully you have some graduate courses that you know you don't need right now, but you're going to need them for the next part, right? And hopefully by the end of the semester, you've completed everything you need for your bachelor's degree. Um, and then the thesis thing is basically the same, except again, you need to find a research advisor, and you have to, have that person hooked up basically already. I would say if you want to do a master's thesis, this is the moment where you have to know kind of who your advisor is, and so this is the time to talk to potential advisors, nail that down, and have that person become your kind of academic advisor also.
Just to add, I know you have those last 2 slides there were the comment about having done some coursework, and you mentioned it as well. Just for those who are not in that situation and are doing just bachelor's work this semester before you start going full force on the master's level work in the fall, that is also okay. What he's explaining is definitely recommended, but it is not required. And I have seen plenty of students do 15 and 15 out of the co-term, in their last 2 semesters, just doing the full master's work. And it can be done as long as you have the right mindset and, work hard at it. It will make it more difficult if you are in that situation to do a thesis, just because the amount of heavy work on that.
Right.
But that is also doable. I have seen it both ways, but if you know you're the type of person that really kind of needs more time, hopefully you are doing like Professor Radke mentioned and putting in some grad work now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly doable, but you really have to have you have to plan for it, right? Because a master's thesis is a sizable document, right? It's not like something that you put together at the very end of the semester, like you might do like a course project. It's something that really you have to be working on. It's going to be like a 50 or 60 page document that has to have all these requirements for formatting and so on. So you can't just bang it out like the last few weeks of your second semester, right? But again, your advisor will help you with that process. But it's definitely something that, if that's your intention, as Kelly said, to start now and be done, uh, or to start in the fall and be done in the spring of 2023, you have to really start to think about the details of that for sure. All right, what else have we got? The handbook has basically all the rules. I didn't, not worth looking at the link, but basically, if you're looking for examples for what does a plan study look like, what are the requirements? And before we're done, I will flip over to the program requirements just to show you the template. All that stuff is on our website, and it's easy to find. If you can't find it, just ask Kelly, and she'll let you know where to go. Pretty much everything that's germane to your master's degree is on the ECSU website. And of course, if you're already RPI students, you know about the other stuff, SIS and RPI info and so on. Most of that stuff is very much the same if you're a current undergraduate going into graduate school. And I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. Um, this is a good time, especially as you go into looking for jobs with your master's degree, to really start to promote yourself, to have a LinkedIn page, to have a personal web page, to have if you have any publications, to link your archive account up to your web page, right? So, it's good to have some sort of a presence so that when someone searches for your name, they know that they can find your kind of academic record, right? So it's not a bad time to start to make a digital presence for yourself, that distinguishes you from, just someone coming out with a bachelor's degree. Someone coming out with a master's degree should have more to say about themselves from a kind of professional point of view. Um, and then there's kind of like the personal side of things, right? So graduate school is a, stressful experience. And hopefully it's a great experience in terms of feeling like you're really getting deeper into things that you only scratch the surface of as an undergraduate. But, make sure to do all the usual things, right? To sleep, get some exercise, go for walks, explore downtown Troy, uh, you know, basically kind of don't do things kind of opportunistically, but think about planning your week. Okay, I have to do these things. You may have to do more, studying out of the classroom than you're used to for a graduate degree, right? In terms of maybe for undergraduate classes, you're used to just like Googling the answer or looking up the solution in the book. For a graduate class, you may need to really think about like reading outside the class, like how do I learn this material in a way that makes sense to me, right? So try to balance all that stuff with a good personal life, a good social life. Try to make friends among other graduate students, to share the load of studying for exams and commiserating with people about tough classes and so on. um, Kelly and I think, are the first point of contact for pretty much any problems you may have. And then above that is the Office of Graduate Education. There's a Dean of Graduate Students, and there's the overall Dean of Students office that kind of takes care of things. So, try to make use of all these resources. It shouldn't be hard to get the help that you need as you go through the process. Um, so that's about it. Before I pause for questions, let me just show the let me just show our web page here for a second to see. Let's just share my desktop. I have a huge desktop, so hopefully you can see it all. So basically, let's just take a look. Almost everything that you need. So I see here we have the first Mercer lecture, right? So not next Wednesday, 2 weeks from now is our first Mercer lecture, which again, if you are not taking a class, we really expect you to attend those. If I go to academics, graduate programs, then we have, master's programs. If we go to master's programs, basically we should have all the details about the requirements for your plan of study, right? So the requirements are very simple. You have to have at least 15 credits at the 6,000 level. So you can take a few 4,000 level courses, but we expect the balance of your courses to be at the 6,000 level. I guess really this is more like the one that you would do, the master's degree without thesis is what most of you are probably doing. So actually for that, you need at least 18 credits at the 6,000 level. at least 18 credits in ECSE, at least one math course, and then no more than a few things, right? So basically, um, it's very open in terms of what you do. When I look at the plans of study, I just check for, does it add up to 30 credits? Are there six basically ECSE courses? Are there 18 credits of 6,000 level courses? And do you have a math class? It's very hard to screw this up. So, as long as you follow these rules, you should be in good shape. MATP does count as math, yes. So that should be fine. In some unusual circumstances, we may count something outside math and MATP, but in general, it should have one of those prefixes. And then this is the handbook that I mentioned that has all of the details in it. And then there's like all of the forms and stuff that you may need for being a graduate student. And I guess that eventually you will see that the Spring 21 orientation that you're seeing right now will appear in this box after we are done here. So I think with that, I've said everything that I need to say. And so let's see if there's any other questions in the chat. Not right now, but are there questions or comments from the crowd that I can help answer?
I don't know if that means they're overwhelmed or if we just did a really good job.
Or bored? I mean, this is a really,
There is a
straightforward.
question in chat. Someone is asking if a Math B course counts as a math course.
Yes. And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So MATP is basically like kind of applied math. And yes, it does count as math.
And Jonathan is actually one of our PhDs who has a potential interest in the master's. So that also works for you as well, even in the PhD program, whether you add that master's or not.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just also say, since you're in that category, one thing to keep in mind as a PhD student who is getting a master's along the way, and a lot of my PhD students have done that, is if you are doing if you want to do a master's thesis along the way, which is fine, one thing to keep in mind is that you really shouldn't like double dip between your master's thesis and your PhD thesis, in the sense that once you publish that master's thesis, it's not like that material is then going to be chapter 3 of your PhD thesis. They should be distinct things, right? So that's something that I kind of, when I advise my own students, I kind of say, okay, so do you have something that you can break off as a master's thesis that we're not going to need for your PhD thesis, right? That's kind of a conversation to have with your PhD advisor. If you're just doing it with coursework, that's also fine, but keep in mind that if you break off a whole bunch of courses to go into your master's thesis, then that may mean you need to take a couple more courses for your PhD thesis than you would have otherwise, right? So it's all doable. It's just something that you have to kind of keep in mind, the way that you choose to split what goes into the master's and what goes into the PhD.
Okay, thank you.
And I see a comment in the chat. If a course that says they're offered this, so yeah, I don't know about advanced hardware design in particular. I guess the general question of, can you count on it being available next spring or next fall for any course? Who knows, right? I mean, to be honest, I think that generally, if a course is in the catalog and it says every fall or every spring, then you should expect that you will see it, right? If the catalog description says something like offered on sufficient demand, offered on even termed, years, something where it seems like this course is not a regular course, then I would be wary about putting that down on your plan of study. And also, I know, for example, that there are some courses that are in the catalog that we haven't offered in a long time that are still there, that the registrar still is waiting, that we're still waiting on the registrar to remove these courses from the catalog, right? So for example, those of you that are in the computer vision or image processing side of things, like there's a course called digital picture processing that is in the catalog, I believe, that we haven't offered like in 10 years. And we keep on saying, get rid of this course so people don't put it in their plan of study, but people still keep on doing it. So if it comes across my desk and I know that you've got a course in there that is not offered anymore, I will probably bounce it back to you or to Kelly and then ask you to put in something more realistic. The short answer is, like if there's something that was supposed to be offered this semester that for some reason we couldn't offer, then I think that you can expect it to come around in the spring. But I can't say for sure, right? Certainly, whatever you put down in spring 2023 is going to be pretty speculative. If it's offered this semester, I think that you can be pretty sure it's going to be offered 1 year from now. But that totally depends on the faculty loading, what TAs we have, all sorts of stuff. So for the moment, I would say put that course in your spring 23 plan as if it was going to happen, and then you'll get there at the end of this calendar year and see whether it's actually going to go or not. Other questions or comments? All right. Well, that was pretty easy. Like I said, I mean, maybe there are no questions because it's very easy to do this degree, other than the hard work it takes to actually get good grades in your classes, but the requirements are very minimal. So as long as you fill out your class study next week and it passes the requirements, then just go ahead and keep your head down and do a good job in the courses, and you should be fine. And with that, I think we can wrap up, right?
Think so. I'll stop recording.